Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavoratii, here to bring you information on the Idaho 4 case. Once again, as a disclaimer, this channel is for entertainment purposes only. These are my opinions. I'm not here to slander anyone. And with that being said, let's get started. This is another edition of my Kohberger is innocent until proven guilty series. And in this video, I think it's important for us to discuss the evidence against Mr. Kohberger. However, it's really difficult for us that's not involved in the case, because we don't have privy to the information that we don't have privy to even discern what is the real evidence against Mr. Kohberger and what is just mainstream media narrative BS. Well, luckily I get to eliminate a couple of those scenarios that mainstream media has put out there in this episode. So that way in future episodes we can focus strictly on the actual evidence against Mr. Kohberger. Now, how am I able to do that with clarity and with certainty? Real simple. I didn't have to do it. The court did it for us. And it's interesting. I almost didn't watch the recent court hearing because I watched a couple of videos of content creators discussing what they heard in that court hearing, and for some reason they didn't mention what I'm about to mention to you here in this video. But it was an eye-opening experience for me. I'm glad that I watched it, and I hope I can open your eyes as well. Now, what I want to do first is let you look at just a couple of minute clip from that court hearing where they're going to discuss the survey that the defense team commissioned to poll residents in Latah County. They were trying to determine bias. So if there was too much bias in the community, it would obviously affect them finding an unbiased jury pool. So it would be in their favor for a change of venue. That's what this survey was for. However, they used certain questions on this survey that the prosecution certainly was not happy with, and they asked the judge to issue an injunction to get them to stop doing the survey. Let's listen to how the prosecution explains what the survey, the negative aspects of the survey, what it was doing, but pay close attention because he's going to go through those survey questions, and I need you to pay attention to those. But if you don't, it's okay. As you know, I'm going to go through them for you when they're done.
Trial. And it goes further down to say this includes performance or results of examinations or tests. Our concern here is that the questions that were being propounded on behalf of the defense, and let me stop for just a moment. I want to be clear on this. We met with Ms. Taylor last week. Week before last. The 21st.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Before the Friday.
Thursday before the Friday when we filed our motion. Yeah.
Yes.
And we raised our concerns with Ms. Taylor. She confirmed for us that the survey was being conducted on behalf of the defense. And we raised with her the concerns we had about the specific language of the questions that were being asked. And Ms. Taylor represented to us, and I do not dispute this, that's why I want to make this part of the record, that she had not seen the actual questions themselves, that she had approved the topics that could be looked into during the survey. So I want to put that in the record that we are not accusing Ms. Taylor of drafting these questions verbatim and then say, go send these out to the public. We are concerned, though, that the people hired by the defense to conduct this survey did exactly that. And the examples of the things that are of concern can be found in the transcript of one of the calls. As Your Honor will recall, we had a person come to us who had received one of these calls, had actually reported the call. And so our office prepared a transcript, and that was attached as Exhibit B, I believe, to our motion for order prohibiting contact. In addition to generic questions about the criminal justice system, here's where we get to things that concern the state immensely. Question: Have you read, seen, or heard if Bryan Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania? Question. Have you read, seen, or heard if police found a knife sheath on the bed next to one of the victims? Question. Have you read, seen, or heard that DNA found on the knife sheath was later matched to Bryan Kohberger? Question. Have you read, seen, or heard if Bryan Kohberger owned the same type of car recorded on video driving in the neighborhood where the killings occurred? Have you read, seen, or heard if the cell phone tower data showed that Bryan Kohberger made several trips near the victim's home in the month before the killing? Have you read, seen, or heard if the university students in Moscow and their parents lived in fear until Bryan Kohberger was arrested for the murders? Have you read, seen, or heard if Bryan Kohberger said that he was out driving alone on the night of the murders? Have you read, seen, or heard if Bryan Kohberger stalked one of the victims? Have you read, seen, or heard if Bryan Kohberger had followed one of the victims on social media? Your Honor, there is absolutely no question but that those questions are disseminating by means of communication evidence expected to be presented, evidence that could be or would be inadmissible at trial. And I will say there are a number of these representations placed in the form of a question, but representations of fact that are not true or that would not be offered at trial.
Hope you found that as interesting as I did, because as he went through and discussed those questions about the evidence against Mr. Kohberger, he was very specific. And at the end, he stated that several of those questions were false. And he also mentioned some were also inadmissible during the trial. So I took the liberty of writing those down. I'm going to show them to you here in this next short video. And then I want you to hear how he really drove it home, how these things were very much false and prejudicial against Mr. Kohberger. Not only him, but the defense attorney and the judge all verified it. Take a look at those questions.
It's not true. That's what the Haddon case tells me I have to show you. It's not enough that there's just a lot of media coverage, and it's a lot more harmful if it's media coverage about things that aren't true. So it's nobody's injecting anything into the case. A random small percentage of the population is contacted. Have you read, seen, or heard things that are lifted straight out?
Detailed information, some of which is completely false. And not only completely false, but it's false in a sense that makes Mr. Kohberger look bad. It is creating bias against Mr. Kohberger based on false or inadmissible evidence. That's outrageous. How can we possibly preserve a jury pool when that's going on?
Questions, especially ones that are false. Then people hear that and they just get even worse sort of impression. Okay, Mr. Kohberger.
Okay, so if you go through those questions, and we're about to go through them, you'll see that a lot of those are easily verified that these are things that are going to be used against Mr. Kohberger in the trial. You know, things like, was Mr. Kohberger arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania? That's in the PCA, that's in the public square, that happened. That's not one of the false statements he was discussing. The next one would be, did police find a knife sheath next to one of the victims? We can obviously assume that one is true as well, because that was put in the probable cause affidavit. That is evidence that's going to be used against Mr. Kohberger. So that one's true as well. And based on the way they discussed everything, we know that more than one of these are false, and at least one are inadmissible during the trial. So as we go through these, we're going to try to determine which ones are false and which ones are inadmissible. Okay, the next one is, did Kohberger drive a vehicle similar to the vehicle seen around the victims' homes during the time of the atrocity? Well, we know that's a yes. I mean, that's in the probable cause affidavit as well. That one is going to be used against Mr. Kohberger. Did Mr. Kohberger, was DNA on the knife sheath matched to Mr. Kohberger? Well, they've put that one out there. We're pretty certain that DNA has been matched to Kohberger. That one's going to be used against him. Did relatives of the victims and other students at the university live in fear until Mr. Kohberger was caught? Now, that is certainly not evidence against Mr. Kohberger. It could not be construed as a false statement, but that would be something that would certainly not be admissible during the trial. Somebody's feelings of fear is not evidenced against somebody. So I think we can safely assume when he said some of it's not admissible, that's the statement that he's referring to. Did Kohberger say he was out driving around by himself the night of the atrocity? Well, Ms. Taylor did put that out in an initial alibi, not the official statement, but in an initial statement that that is what Mr. Kohberger was doing the night of the atrocity. So we can assume that one's a fact. Did the call tower data show that Mr. Kohberger had visited the victims' homes during the months prior to the atrocity 13 times? That one's been put out there. I mean, that could be questioned, but I'm going to assume that that one's probably a fact. I think that one can be left in there, but it's certainly a question. Did Mr. Kohberger stalk one of the victims? Heard that one a lot in mainstream media. I'm going to tell you that one right there, that is a false statement by the mainstream media. That is what they're referring to during that trial about false evidence making Mr. Kohberger look bad. They have no evidence that he stalked one of the victims. And the other one is, did he follow one of the victims on social media? That one doesn't fit either. So we can now eliminate any connection, I imagine, of Mr. Kohberger to the victims in this atrocity. And without a connection to those victims, motive is going to be a really hard thing for the prosecution to sell to a jury. Now let's take a look at that list one more time and I'll show you what we've eliminated. Okay, so going through the Kohberger is innocent until proven guilty theory, we can eliminate some of the bogus BS that mainstream media has put out there thanks to the court itself. I'll look forward to attacking some of the other evidence that they are going to use against him in court in future episodes. But until then, thank you for liking and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your comments, your criticisms. You know those are my favorite. And as always, Pavoratii is out.